Everyone in the neighborhood thought he'd finally lost his mind. After returning from deployment, veteran Mark Fletcher didn't rebuild his porch, didn't fix his leaking roof, didn't repaint his weathered cabin. Instead, he stepped outside with his loyal K9, Ranger, pointed at the house, and started building a shed around it. Neighbors snickered from their driveways. Some whispered he had PTSD. Others filmed him for social media. Crazy vet building a wooden cage. What on earth is he doing? Why box in your own home? He must have brought the war back with him. They laughed. They judged. They whispered. But Mark didn't flinch that he measured. He hammered. Rangers stood guard like the ground itself was sacred. And the strange wooden wall surrounding his cabin grew taller and stronger every single day. Then winter came. Not a normal winter, but a deadly, bone-shattering freeze unlike anything the town had ever faced. Power grids collapsed. Heaters died. Houses dropped to freezing within hours. And suddenly, the same neighbors who mocked him were the ones shivering in the dark that a record-breaking freeze crippled the entire town. Firewood sold out. Generators failed. Temperatures plunged to life-threatening lows. And then, everyone understood, because when the cold came, only one home on the entire street still had warmth flickering behind the windows. That Mark's crazy shed, the one they mocked, laughed at, and called insane, became the miracle that saved the entire neighborhood. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The first snow hadn't even fallen, yet when Mark Fletcher stepped out of his weather-beaten cabin with a pair of work gloves, an axe slung over his shoulder, and his loyal K9, Ranger, trotting faithfully beside him, the morning air was crisp, still, and quiet, until the steady thunk, thunk, thunk of Mark's splitting wood echoed through the neighborhood. Everyone watched. Everyone whispered. Just weeks earlier, Mark had returned from deployment. Instead of fixing his leaking roof or repainting the peeling siding, he began hauling thick stacks of lumber to the edge of his porch. Day after day, he hammered boards together, building what looked like an oversized wooden wall, completely encircling his house. Neighbors snickered from their driveways. "Look at him," one man laughed. "Guy comes home from the military and starts building a giant box around his house." "Probably snapped," another muttered. "Poor fellow." But Mark didn't look broken. His movements were precise, determined, almost ritualistic. Ranger stayed at his heels, watching every swing, every board set in place, tail stiff, ears alert. Mark never looked up when people mocked him, never explained what he was doing, never slowed down. He simply built, because he knew something they didn't. And winter was coming. By the end of the week, the neighborhood was buzzing. What began as quiet whispers turned into full-blown gossip rolling from porch to porch like wildfire. "Have you seen the wall he's building? It's taller today. He's blocking the sunlight from my yard." Every morning, Mark and Ranger emerged before sunrise. Mark hauled more boards. Ranger paced the perimeter, growling softly whenever strangers came too close. Their routine was unbreakable, methodical, disciplined, almost military. Kids rode their bikes past the property, pointing at the growing wooden structure around the house like it was some bizarre tourist attraction. One boy dared another to touch the new wall. He crept forward, hand outstretched. Ranger exploded with a bark so sharp the child fell backward, scrambling away in terror. Phones came out instantly, recording, posting, mocking. Crazy veteran building Noah's Arkansas. He and that dog need therapy. Soon, the complaints reached the city inspector. He arrived one afternoon, clipboard in hand, shaking his head at the towering wooden shell around the cabin. Mark wiped sweat from his brow and leaned on his axe. "You're building a shed around your house?" The inspector asked, something like that. Mark replied calmly, "Why?" Mark simply pointed at the permit posted on the wall. "All legal, all approved." The inspector had no choice but to leave. Meanwhile, the structure kept growing, thicker, sturdier, stronger. And underneath it all, hidden behind the jokes and the judgment, Mark's secret began taking shape. That he wasn't building a wall, he was building protection. Every dawn, long before the neighborhood woke, Mark and Ranger were already outside. Frost clung to the grass, their breaths lingering in the cold morning air. Mark swung his axe with steady, practiced strength, each strike splitting the thick logs cleanly down the middle. Ranger stayed close, carrying smaller pieces in his jaws and dropping them neatly onto the growing piles that Tio the neighbors. It looked obsessive. To Mark, it was survival. Inside the wooden shell he was building around the house, rows upon rows of stacked firewood rose toward the ceiling like towering walls of fuel. Mark packed them tightly, creating a thick, insulated barrier hidden behind the outer boards. Every layer made the structure stronger and warmer. No one understood the purpose. But Mark wasn't building at random. He was building from memory. Late one evening, as he sat on the porch sharpening his axe, Ranger rested his head on Mark's knee. A cold breeze rolled across the yard, triggering a memory so vivid Mark froze. A winter overseas. A remote village with no power. A brutal storm that dropped temperatures so low it killed people in their sleep. And Mark's unit, helpless, unable to save them because there was no heat, no firewood, nothing. That night had carved a scar deeper than any wound from battle. Mark whispered into Ranger's fur, "Never again. Not here." The dog lifted his head and nudged his shoulder, as if he understood, and so Mark worked tirelessly, because winter was coming. And this time, he would be ready. The first warning came on the radio, an unexpected Arctic cold front sweeping down faster than any forecast predicted. By midnight, temperatures had already plummeted. By morning, the entire town was drowning in ice. The storm hit like a hammer. Wind screamed against rooftops. Power lines snapped under thick blankets of frost. One by one, houses went dark, heaters sputtering out with a final groan. Panic spread faster than the cold. Mark stood on his porch, breath fogging in the air, Ranger by his side. The wooden structure he built creaked under the pressure, but held strong, insulated by thousands of logs stacked behind its walls. Inside, the temperature remained steady, warm, almost comfortable, but outside, neighbors stumbled onto the street wrapped in thin blankets, shivering violently. Kids cried. Old men coughed. People tried calling for help, only to discover cell towers had frozen. Even the nearest firewood suppliers were shut down, their stockrooms empty within hours. Ranger's ears perked. He whined, nudged Mark's hand, then stared down the icy street. Mark understood instantly. People needed help. He grabbed his coat, pulled open the shed door, and a wave of warm air rushed out, heat radiating from the firewood-insulated walls. Ranger barked, urging him on. Through the blinding cold, a neighbor collapsed near their mailbox. Mark sprinted over, lifting the man onto his shoulder. "Come with me," he shouted. "You're freezing." One by one, neighbors began gathering outside Mark's home, desperate, trembling, confused. Little did they know, the crazy shed was about to save them all. As the cold deepened, Mark opened the outer door of the wooden structure and guided the shivering neighbors inside. They stepped in expecting a dark, cramped shed, but froze in astonishment when warm air wrapped around them like a blanket. Instead of clutter, the interior was lined with towering walls of neatly stacked firewood, reaching from floor to ceiling. The wood absorbed and held heat, turning the entire enclosure into a natural thermal insulator. This is why you built it," Mrs. Dalton whispered, rubbing her frozen hands together. Mark nodded. "I saw people freeze overseas. Thought it would never happen here. I was wrong." A stunned silence settled over the room as Ranger weaved between the neighbors, nose nudging their legs, checking each one as if taking roll call. Children huddled near the warm wooden walls, sighing with relief. Elderly neighbors cried softly, grateful simply to feel their fingers again. Even those who mocked Mark the loudest stared around in shame. "You saved us," Mr. Howell murmured, voice breaking. "All of us." Mark simply shrugged. Firewood stays warm. Walls keep heat in. Simple math. But nothing about what he'd done was simple. He had built protection for everyone who once laughed at him. When the storm finally passed, sunlight spilled across the neighborhood like an apology. People emerged from Mark's wooden shelter, faces thawed, spirits lifted, lives saved. Ranger trotted proudly beside them, tail wagging like he had personally guarded each person through the night. Neighbors who once laughed now stood in a quiet circle around Mark, unable to meet his eyes. Mrs. Dalton stepped forward first. "We misjudged you," she whispered. "All of us." One by one, the others echoed apologies, some embarrassed, some emotional, all sincere. Mark simply nodded, scratching Ranger behind the ears. "Doesn't matter. What matters is everyone's okay. In the days that followed, something changed. The same people who mocked him now showed up with tools, nails, and lumber. Together, they reinforced the shed, added insulation, and restocked firewood for the next winter. Ranger watched proudly as the community transformed. What they once called a crazy shed, they now called the warm house. And the veteran who built it became the quiet hero who saved them all.